What traumatized you so badly it changed your whole way of living? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It doesn't sound too traumatic when typed out, but when I was younger, we always had debt collectors or bailiffs at the door. Sometimes I'd be home alone and they'd be pounding at the door or shouting through the letterbox. There were even times they ended up in the house and would start the process of calculating all of our items they were going to take away. This happened throughout a majority of my childhood or teen years. Admittedly, it was a lot scary to me then. However, I am now 21 and still panic when the door knocks and I'm not expecting anyone. Growing up with parents who resented each other and fought constantly but refused to divorce has made me incapable of feeling anything but petrified and suffocated by relationships. When I was 12, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. It was slow growing. It became our normal. When I was 19, she went into hospice. I spent my first summer break in college taking care of her while she was bedridden in excruciating pain, delusional, hallucinating. She'd wake up at night crying, and I was the only one patient enough to calm her down, and only usually. Sometimes she was too far gone from reality. The worst part was, she still knew what she was saying didn't make any sense, but it felt real to her, and she was trying to communicate a need that she knew couldn't be met. Everything was horrible. There was so much going on that I can't even put into words, suffering I can't even comprehend. I started drinking and smoking. I drank myself to sleep most nights and really do think it kept me sane. She would not die though. She begged me to kill her. For the longest time, even after she died, I felt selfish for not having done it. When they transferred her to an inpatient hospice, they kept jostling the stretcher, leaning it back and forth to get it up and down the steps and out the door and into the ambulance. At this point, she had met in her bones, and then any sort of movement like that caused pain that felt like her bones were breaking. I wish I could forget the sounds she made. I can't even describe it. After that, I went upstairs and chugged vodka and cried. It was the last time I saw her. When I was 21, I started talking to my twin again beyond small talk. We're 24 in 2 weeks. We still haven't talked about my mom. You don't just get over that shit. Finding out at 15 that my suspicion of being adopted really was true, which explained why my sister was on a pedestal and then raised me like they were Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia. I found out that my uncle was really my biological dad, who put me up for adoption but kept literally all of his other kids, and my cousin was really my older brother who had passed away 3 days before I found out all of this out. Mom and dad were really aunt and uncle, and they were reluctant to adopt me in the first place. I was, to them, a literal, physical embodiment of a mistake they couldn't go back on. Waking up to my second-story apartment on fire, that was 2 years ago, and I haven't slept a full night since. Also, my animals always sleep in my room now. A kid I went to school with was being systematically tortured at home by his sadistic mother. It was kindergarten, but I remember him having marks on his arms. I was just a kid and didn't know they were cigarette burns, so no adult stepped in to help this kid, and one day I guess his mother decided it would be a good idea to put him in the dryer. She killed him and tried to say it was an accident, but thankfully they arrested her and she got life in prison. His name was Anthony. I think about him all the time. A family member who was dying of smoking-induced lung cancer. While essentially drowning on fluids, they grabbed me and said, "What would I give to show this to me at 20? Cigarettes never looked the same." Being sexually abused as a child by a family member, besides the obvious effect, I also developed serious sleep issues in which I basically don't go to sleep until my eyes refuse to stay open any longer. It's common for me to feel exhausted, lay down to sleep, then get right back up 10 minutes later to forge through another half hour or so. The other effect is that I'm obsessed with making sure I'm locked in my home. Front door is locked behind me as soon as I enter, screen door included. All windows are locked. If I lived alone, I would lock my bedroom door as well. But I've learned over the years that one is detrimental to relationships with my awesome family members. It's just a level too odd for them. When I was in first grade, I liked a boy in my class. We were great friends for most of that year. He became sick and passed away before the school year ended. Broke my heart, and I really didn't understand it. Then, when I was in second grade, there was a boy and his sister that I became good friends with. He and his sister were hit by a drunk driver one weekend, and they both died. So after losing my best friends in only a couple of years, I really became a loner. I never really made good friendships with anyone since then, so afraid of losing them. I'm now in my 60s and quite happy being by myself. My mother getting sick in 2010 and dying of a brain tumor in 2012 at age 52. I value family and friendships much more than anything else in life, and am thankful for every day I get to live a healthy and happy life. Someone leaving me a voicemail before they committed suicide. I must have replayed that message over 100 times, and I've never looked at any of my friends the same since. I tell people I will always look at them under a microscope when it comes to their mental health because, well, I feel like I can't afford not to anymore. My wife having an affair with an ex shortly after I spent my savings on a house for us. Lost a wife, stepson, pets, house, money, and my secondary job all in one day. It was over 2 years ago, and I still have so many unchecked feelings towards it. Disrupted my concentration at my main job and gave me severe depression. I struggle daily to find inner peace to move on, but it feels hopeless. The first girl I had a crush on died over 7 years ago. We met through mutual friends, went on some type of double date which basically consisted of me, a friend, and her cousin staying the night at her place. I was just so attracted to her. I couldn't believe she would be into me until she was sitting on my lap making out with me. Things got a little messy afterwards. We did meet on and off a few times, then she broke it off because of some rumors she heard about me. Still no clue what she was on about, though I failed to address it properly. Got back in touch 6 months later, and we started getting closer again. Then, dead silence. 3 years later, I went to the hospital in my hometown because of a back injury. I met her there by accident, bound to a wheelchair and completely drained. Couldn't have weighed more than 40 kilograms, most likely less. We had one final short and awkward conversation, that she was brought back to her room by a nurse. A week later, she was dead. So many things left unsaid, so many wasted opportunities of happiness, and the overbearing feeling that life was just so fragile. It could all be over so quickly. After that, I decided to live with no regrets. 7.5 years later, and I tried to make the best out of everything and leave no stone unturned. I might not have been perfect, but I'm quite happy with how things turned out. In any case, rest in peace, Linda. 1992 to 2014. I hope you're in a better place now. You sure deserve it. My mom passing away. It's long, but it's the most I've ever shared. She was literally the glue that held my brother, my dad, and I together. She was funny, smart, caring, and beautiful. She was the perfect mother. In 2016, my whole family was chasing careers and we rarely saw each other. Holidays, we acted like we were close for a few hours and we would go back to our concerns and corners of life. Then, my mom had a stroke. It shook my whole family. She shouldn't have lived, but she did. Doctors told us to make arrangements before they started emergency surgery. But she lives, and it took her months and months of PT before she was released. I spent 8 hours at work and would come to ICU for the night to be with her until my dad or brother showed up in the morning. Rinse, repeat. Surrounded by people dropping like effing flies. Alarms going off, suits coming in, families crying as I watched my mom with a tube down her throat, not knowing if I would have to speak to the suits that night. She was diagnosed with moya moya, which in Japanese means a puff of smoke, representing the lack of visual blood flow in the brain, a disease that is often diagnosed in children between the ages of 10 and 14 or adults over the age of 40 from Asian descent, which my mom was neither. A rise in blood pressure with moya moya is a death sentence. It should have, but it wasn't. So she recovers. She had to do 2 cerebral bypasses where they take a vein from your neck and lay it on your brain. Your brain incorporates the vein to give itself a healthy blood flow. We did one side and let herself heal for a few months before attempting the other side. She was then diagnosed with breast cancer. We fell apart. She couldn't get the second bypass because chemo was needed and it would wreck the body to have surgery while battling cancer. She lost her hair after growing it back due to the cerebral bypass. She was so strong. She beat cancer, had her second bypass, and it was finally over. We went back to our normal lives as if nothing happened. I went back to work, my brother went back on the road, and my parents bought a house. She couldn't work anymore, so my dad had to work harder. I drank harder, I distanced harder, and isolated myself up a few years ago when I went to therapy. Few months ago, we all meet up after she came back from vacation with my dad. She was in mid-conversation when she suffered a massive stroke. We had to go back to that effing hospital. Her body suffered for almost a week before she passed. I'm not sure how this changes me, but I feel changed. I don't know if some things are better or worse. I just don't know. My parents never asked for a thing their entire lives, and the world gave them this. It gave us this, and it breaks my heart. Being disowned and kicked out of my childhood home by my mother a few days after my 18th birthday. For years, I'd expressed my terror of being abandoned and becoming homeless, and she sympathized and reassured she'd always take care of me and love me. As I got older and was pursuing more independence and self-advocacy, she became more hostile. She'd medically neglected me my entire life, and when I turned 18, found out what Medicaid was. She wasn't having it. Screamed at me in front of my little brother for hours, calling me a selfish little shit and a monster who was tearing the house down from under her feet. Told me to pack my bags, and I was leaving tomorrow and never allowed back. My brother and I both left the next morning and are staying with our dad. My brother still visits my mom, and I live here full time, but it's not a better situation. My father is an abusive alcoholic and is medically neglected to both me and himself. I feel like I'm raising both my little brother and my father sometimes. I've gone through a lot of things throughout my life. Diagnosed with CPTSD until later in life when it was confirmed as DID and BPD instead. I'm not fully here most of the time and have no stable sense of self. Though I used to be worse, I'm done feeling like I'm doing well. The situation on my birthday led me to not indulge in connections with others, and I refuse physical contact. I haven't hugged anyone in a few months, and now I flinch at being tapped on the shoulder. It's weird because I used to be very touchy. I'm spilling my guts here. I don't know if I'll regret it or not. I don't talk to people about this, and when I do, it never feels right. Nobody gets it, and that's fine for now, because I have whoever I am, so that's one and one person only to rely on. On a lighter note, I'm 4 months clean of self-harm. Woohoo! I, 33 male, was stabbed, suffered an aneurysm, and ultimately a stroke, all in the same week 2 years ago. Wow. I lost function of my left side of my body. My first day out of the hospital and back at home, I was laid up in bed. The next day, I asked my wife to help dress me because I could use the left side of my body. She proceeded to hit me and scratch me and curse at me because I suffered a stroke and couldn't dress myself. That day, I realized I had to do whatever to survive and move on. I'm nearly recovered from the stroke, so I'm getting my wife a divorce for Christmas because now I'm completely self-sufficient. Good for you. I was happy as a kid, the happy-go-lucky nerd that was nice to everyone. However, my dad was an angry, abusive disgrace of a human being. He beat me and my brother to a bloody pulp over the smallest things. He then threatened to kill me, my brother, my mom, and all of our pets if we told anyone. It really reached a head when I was 10. He pinned me up against the sink with a large kitchen knife to my throat. After that, I was never the same. I started isolating myself. I gained weight. I became mean and rude, and school counseling didn't help. I was absolutely pissed at my father for scarring me and my brother and then ruining our mental state. But my mom refused to file for a divorce, stating that she didn't see it, so it didn't happen. I was effing livid. Dad, if you're reading this, burn in the deepest pits of hell, you effing twat. Just generally being bullied in school and getting effed over and over afterwards for decades made me into an incredibly distrustful hermit, protecting myself from people by keeping people away. It was the only way.